everyone, welcome to the Miss Texas show where we showcase lifestyle in Texas and highlight amazing survivors of traumatic events, sex trafficking, sexual assault, domestic abuse, and to showcase the community leaders to share their community resources. We have a segment called The Military Times, who we partner with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce. And under this segment, we invite military and veterans who would like to share with us their experience during and after their military service. We also have a segment called Beauty for Ashes, where we invite our pageant sisters who can be winners as well as nominees, and artists such as musicians, actors, dancers, but last but not least, our ambassadors and advocates who are survivors of these traumatic events and share with us what they're doing in their life and the impact they're making to the community. If you would like to be part of the show, feel free to email us at MsUSATexas@gmail.com. It is MsUSATexas@gmail.com, or you can contact us on the same handle name in Facebook, Miss USA Texas. So without further ado, today our special guest is Mr. Will Francis. And Mr. Will Francis is going to talk to us about the community protection for the LGBTQ community. As you know, that the purpose of this show is to bring awareness and prevention for these crimes that I have previously mentioned about. And recently, I understand there has been some changes to the policies. And Mr. Will Francis is the executive director for the Texas chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. And it is the largest organization of professional social workers in the world, and is committed to advancing professional social worker practice and profession, promoting human rights, social and economic justice, and fight for the impeded access to service for everyone. So without further ado, Mr. Francis, we're going to pass the mic to you to tell us a little bit, about what you do and what this change is exactly, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction, and it really is an honor to be here and get the chance to speak with you and then give your listeners some background. Social work is really such a bedrock of the mental health and gosh, the landscape in Texas is full of social workers. You find them in schools, you find them in healthcare settings, you find them in criminal justice and child welfare, communities, private practice. Social workers are everywhere, and they're such a big part of how people get services that they need. And we have in this state a code of conduct, which is very clear that a social worker should never discriminate against anyone based on that person's ethnicity, political affiliation, their gender, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and disability were in there, but have been removed, and a whole list of other things. So really, it's just this idea that we want to make sure all doors are open, and that if someone needs that support, it's there. And recently, the governor of Texas decided that our language in our code of conduct didn't align with what he felt we had the legal right to do, and so he asked our board to change that. And we felt that this was done not in a proactive, positive way of inviting comment and having people share their thoughts on this, but sort of done behind the scenes. And then really in a way that does not take into account that anti-discrimination is what protects people and is what ensures that everybody gets those access to services. So we're fighting back. We're really going to push back. We've seen wonderful support from across the state. And I'm excited to tell you how your listeners can get involved and how other people can become a part of this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this important message. As you mentioned that, victims, they don't have a choice, and anyone can be a victim regardless of your age, your race, your nationality, sexual orientation, social, economic status. So we shouldn't discriminate people of any group to get the help that they truly deserve. And I applaud that, as one of the nation's largest organizations of social workers, because it is essential that you guys are providing the services to the people that are in need. And I'm sorry to hear about the change of the policy. And can you provide to us more details in terms of, if there is a deadline in terms of them commenting on that, where they can comment on that?
Yeah, and I want to hit on something that you said just a second ago, which I think is a really important point. There are sort of two ways, many ways, but sort of two big ways you could see a social worker. Like, I need some help, and maybe I need counseling, or maybe I need to go into my school social worker and say, there are resources that I need, or maybe you're involved in things in your community and you say, where do I go get help? And you go to a social worker. Then there are others who find themselves in front of a social worker for involuntary reasons. Maybe they were involved in domestic violence and they are leaving and they are going to a shelter, or they're seeking out support because they need that help, and they find themselves, I have nowhere else to turn. I have to have that social worker help me. That social worker has to respect that person and be willing to provide the service to that person no matter what. And so this change of the code of conduct could create a situation where maybe someone was fleeing domestic violence, maybe they found themselves needing a shelter, or maybe they found themselves needing counseling and could get turned away. And that would be absolutely tragic if someone did not have the services or the help they need because the social worker said, I'm sorry, this is what I believe, and I don't believe I can help someone like you. That is the total antithesis to our whole profession. Our whole profession, based on the idea that we don't put our own judgments, our own values, our own beliefs in front of that client's right to seek and get the help and support that they need. And so I think you raise a really good point of just how impactful this really could be to someone who's involved in trafficking, someone domestic violence, intimate partner violence. All of that really does come into a big play here. If people are upset about this, I recommend a couple things. One, you can go onto the governor's website. It's very easy. Just sort of Google Governor Abbott contact, and you'll see a form on how to contact him. And you can express displeasure in this. You can say, you know, Governor, I think this was an overreach. I think you should allow social workers to determine their own code of conduct. And I really think that you should not, as a government, be telling a profession who they can and cannot see when it comes to those services. Someone could reach out to their local legislator. They could talk to their state senator or their state rep and say, this is really important that there is non-discrimination protection for everyone. Would you be interested in reaching out to the governor? How about talking to the Behavioral Health Executive Council, the BHEC, BHEC, which is the agency in Texas that supports our board? Would you be interested in supporting non-discrimination legislation if it was filed next session? We already have some legislators that are willing to do that. And it's really important that this is a bipartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats can come together and say, we believe everyone has access to services. They could do that. And then actually, next Tuesday, the 27th of October, there will be a hearing of the Behavioral Health Executive Council. It will be on Zoom. It's pretty easy to find. If you type in BHEC Texas, it'll take you to their page and you can go from there. And people can actually testify if they want to. They'll get 3 minutes to speak. We encourage them to share a personal story of why discrimination would impact them or their issue, and ask that this rule not be implemented and that our board be allowed to maintain non-discrimination language.
So let me see that we're going to reiterate. So there are pretty much like 3 ways that people can help here. They can either contact the Governor Abbott's contact details on his website directly to him, write a comment, or contact their local legislatures. But there's also going to be a hearing from the BAGC from the Zoom link, which we will be linking at the comment section below so that you can link to. So do people, if they want to participate, do you have an exact time on the 27th so that we can provide to the audience and they can make time for that? Secondly, do they have to sort of RSVP to testify, or how do they do that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting world we live in. In pre-COVID, you would have had to have been in Austin, you've had to have shown up, signed in, said you wanted to testify, hang around, and then speak there. It's virtual. It's on Zoom. It'll be at 9 a.m. on October 27th, and then I'll share the link with you to share with your listeners, and they'll be able to see exactly how they sign in. All you have to do is be there, and when it comes time for public comment, they will say, would anyone like to give public comment? And on Zoom, you press raise hand, and that will put you in line. And you'll have up to 3 minutes. You don't have to take it all, but you certainly are extended that time. And again, that's when you can really make this personal. We have some talking points out there, which are essentially allow this, please keep this non-discrimination language in place, or otherwise give it back to the board, the licensing board, to determine how do they fix this. But I don't want to sort of give a script to people. I really think that it's most powerful when people speak from their own experience. When people talk, maybe for your listeners, it is domestic violence, or maybe someone else has a story with human trafficking, why it was so important that when help was there, the person providing the help needed to be completely open and supportive of that person. Maybe there's some statistics that they have around some of these issues that they'd like to share to show just how serious some of these issues are and how we really do need these professionals there. And what it means, maybe it's for a client, maybe it's for themselves, a family member, a friend. What would that mean were that person not able to get help? And I think those are the stories that will hopefully really move this issue, showing that this is a human face here and not just sort of this large policy thing that's happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're on the same page. Like you said, this is bipartisan. And in my words, it's a community matter. It's a global issue. So it's regardless, I'm a woman, you're a man. I'm from China originally, but I'm in Texas now. So regardless of who you are, what you are, and where you are, you can participate if you believe in this cause, because this is a global cause. And it's happening, to everyone, and knowing or without knowing. And I just actually got off an interview not long ago with a different activist herself, and she shared with us about how helpful she has learned so much from social workers from her support group. So in this case, she is a survivor of domestic abuse, and her abuser was a narcissist, and they were in marriage for over 2 decades, and she did not know the signs until like even years later after the group therapy to even notice that. And I mean, I cannot even begin to tell like how essential you guys are doing all those social work in the community. I work with a lot of the nonprofit organizations. One of them that I sit as the spokesperson with is Hope QYX Global. And as mentioned, we fight against sex trafficking, sexual abuse, and domestic abuse. And on one hand, it's wonderful that just like you and I'm in Houston, you're in Austin, and we're able to use the technology through Zoom to do the call today that in the past, like last year, we had to go to Austin to do a meeting like this. And same as all the telehearing right now. So do take advantage of participating in that, because even if you wanted to, maybe you didn't have time, you didn't have the resources to, but now you do. And if you do relate to this, many of our listeners, they are our followers who are not just victims and survivors, who are strong supporters. And once again, this show is all about getting the freedom to the people who truly deserve, regardless of who they are, what they are. So I really support of what you do. And we are going to link all the information in the comment section below. If you have any questions, you can email us, or you can also contact Mr. Francis directly, because I know this is time sensitive, so that we wanted to make sure that you get the questions answered immediately. I know that we've been in contact, and he has been very fast in responding and very on point. So also, if you can explain to our audience, like in terms of them whether they're going to testify at a hearing or all those comments, is there like a certain amount of comments, testimonials per se that will count per se when it comes to them to make the decision on this? And what are the process moving forward? We have to be prepared in both hands. What if the hearing is not to the favor that you desire? Then are there next steps? Can they, appellate court, and what are the next steps?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And as someone who, before I stepped into the executive director role, I was the government relations director, and so I was a lobbyist at the Texas Capitol for about 5 years. And yeah, there's no magic number on the number of people testifying. Changes someone's mind. That's tough, but at the same time, testimony does two things. One, every voice counts and it matters, and it really does show just how important this is. And so, no one testifying is not doing an amazing job in putting that message out there and amplifying other people's messages. And two, testimony cannot just be for the committee itself. It's a way to show people in the community that you're passionate about this issue. And there's been times when I've testified and not necessarily received the best reception from the people I was speaking to, but someone came up to me after and said, "Oh, wow, this is an issue I care about as well. I'd love to get involved." Or, "Wow, you really showed something to me. I'm ready to participate." So really think of your speaking as going two ways. One, trying to influence the council and to make sure that they're placing those non-discrimination language in there. And two, sending it out to Texas and beyond so that other people see just really how important this is. But you're right, we're not dumping everything into this basket and saying, well, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. There are ways that this may come up next session in legislation, that there may very well be, and we're in discussions now with some legislators about putting protections out there to ensuring that discrimination is not allowed, no matter what you do. There's also discussion about maybe legal ways are the way to go. I'm not privy to sort of anything knowledge yet, but nothing's off the table. I'll say that. And so the courts could be that place to fight. Last session, and you may very well know this, but last session a bill was passed that requires all licensed professionals to now take a human trafficking course every time that their continuing education comes up. And it's one that I've been really working with our members on and saying, here's a course through HHSC, the Health and Human Services Commission. There are other great courses out there, but it's knowledge you need, whether you're someone like me who is in an executive director position and never sees clients, or whether you're in the community, you need to not have the knowledge on how to recognize human trafficking, on how to have conversations about it, on where to refer. This is such an important piece. And I would hate to think that someone who now gained these new skills wasn't in a place where they could help people, because this new change keeps them away from maybe someone who needed the help most. So if we're going to do things like that, to say you must have this training, you must have these skills, then we have to make sure those skills are available to everyone, and that this is really about making Texas as inclusive and supportive as possible.
Yes, we are all Texans, and we need to stand by the cause. And like you mentioned about the human trafficking training, I know that it's very sadly, and I'm sure you are aware that Texas is the #2 state when it comes to the human trafficking numbers, and Houston is the #1 when it comes to human trafficking numbers. So now, when I mentioned like we had to go to Austin to advocate, and we had an advocacy day at the governor's last year, and this year we couldn't. So, we now have the advantage of going these through Zoom and do take advantage of it. And it takes a whole army to fight this cause. And this is a community issue. And it might not, like I mentioned earlier, it's happening in our backyard. Maybe you are not a victim now. Maybe you don't know that you're a victim, but only by knowing and having the awareness and understanding of that can we prevent that from happening to ourselves. It can be your daughter, it can be your sister, it can be your mother. Because last year I was in person at a vigil. It gave me goosebumps. It was so sad. It was a domestic violence survivors vigil, and the victims vigil. And unfortunately, some of them did not make it. And the ones that actually passed away, they include from as young as several months old to as old as over 80 years old. Just like I said, this cause is the COVID is a pandemic that we can see. People are suffering from symptoms, whether it's the lung problem and the flu-like symptoms. But this, I always call it the growing pandemic. And this is something that we all have to do it. It's a Texan. And I strongly suggest all of our viewers to help in this manner. And if you can participate, that's great. If you know of someone who can participate, please share. Once again, this is the Miss Texas show, and where we want to promote the freedom for everyone. And this is what our whole country is for. And we are Texas. And I am Miss Texas. Thank you so much, Miss Will Francis, Mr. Will Francis, for this explanation and telling our audience about the important information. We will be linking in the comment section below with the link where you can attend the Zoom meeting, as well as Mr. Francis' information, so that you can contact him directly. But thank you again for participating.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll see you next time. And if you think that this show is helpful to you, make sure that you subscribe to the channel below, and we will be posting a lot of similar information like this before. Thank you, and have a great day.